Hello friends, SchoolSteps.in welcomes you again. This is part 2 of GridView Pager. Let's proceed from where we left in the previous tutorial. We need to create MyGrid Pager adapter. Before we create this adapter, I want to show you that I have made some entries in the strings.xml file, and the entries are corresponding to row 0, column 0, title and text, and similarly for row 1 I have created 2 columns. For row 2 I have created 4 columns as I showed in the presentation. So every column has a title and a text. Let's go back to the main activity.java. Let's copy this. Now right click on the package structure, go to new Java class and give the name as MyGridPagerAdapter. Click on OK. It will create a class for you. Now we need to extend this to the fragment grid pager adapter as I mentioned in the previous tutorial. So it asks us to override the get column count method. Right click here, go to generate, look for override methods and look for get column count, which we need to override, which is right here. Click OK. Now further it will ask us to override the get row count method. Let's override this as well. Next, it asks us to override the get fragment method. Let's override this method as well. Click OK. Now it is complaining about the constructor. So we need to create a constructor with the two parameters. We need to pass context, let's say ctx. Save it. And the error is gone. Now let's get back to our presentation. So we need to create a list which will contain 3 rows, and further every row will contain a list which will further contain single or multiple columns. Let's achieve it. Let's define one list here. Let's call it private list, and let's define the type as row, and let's call it master list. Now we need to declare the class row. Let's do it. So right here, let's say private class row, and as I said, inside the row we need another list so that it could contain the fragments or columns. So let's say final list of type fragment. Let's call it list of columns is equal to new array list. Now let's define the constructor of the class row, and let's pass fragment as the parameter. Now let's define 3 dots right here. These 3 dots are called variable arguments. Variable arguments are the part of Java 5. If you want to define variable arguments, you have to make sure that it should be the last argument of the constructor or of the method. So variable argument provides us a flexibility. It gives us the flexibility in the sense that if I take the case of fragment here the fragment can contain any number of fragments, including none. So when we receive fragment as a parameter, it could be none or it could be any number of fragments. So this way it gives us the flexibility. So if you want to know in detail about the variable arguments, I would request you to go through these 2 links. Let's call it fragments, and right here let's run the for loop, and inside the for loop let's use the method add, and let's pass f in the add method. Now we need to define the method add. So right here let's say public void add, let's pass fragment as the parameter. Let's say list of columns which we have defined above dot add, and let's add fragment. After defining the add method, let's define 2 more methods. One is the get column and another one is the get column count. The get column method is returning the fragment. So all we are doing is we are passing one int as a parameter, and from the list of columns we are getting that particular object. And in the get column count, all we are doing is we are returning the size of the list of columns. Now let's implement these 3 methods which we override just a couple of minutes back. One more thing which you need to understand is that these 3 methods are not the part of the class row. So these 3 methods are the one which we override as a requirement when we extended the class fragment grid page adapter. So these 3 methods are defined as abstract in the class fragment grid pager adapter. Let's work on these three methods. So first of all, let's implement the get column count method, and let's change this I variable to row number. So right here, rather than returning 0, let's say master list dot get of row number dot get column count. Here, if you notice, this get column count method is the one which we have defined inside the class row. So here, using the master list, we are reaching the particular row, and further we are getting the column count of that particular row. In the get row count method, let's say return master list dot size, and in the get fragment method, let's call it row, and let's call it call. Now inside this method, let's get the object of row first. So we need to say row is equal to master list dot get of row. It will return the object of row, and further using the object of row, we can get the particular column. So we need to say return row dot get column, and right here we need to pass call. Now till now we have not initialized the master list. Let's do it inside the constructor. So let's say master list is equal to new array list of type row. Now let's add values to the master list. So we need to say master list dot add. We need to add row inside the master list. So we need to say new row, and inside the row, as I mentioned, we need to add the fragment. So let's say card fragment, and inside the card fragment, let's pass two parameters. One is the title and other one is the text. So we need to say here r.string dot row 0 column 0 title, and r.string dot row 0 column 0 text, which is right here. If you remember, we have already defined these values in the strings.xml. So now card fragment method, it doesn't exist. We need to implement it. Let's implement it right away. Before that, let's declare and initialize one context variable. And right here, let's say this dot context is equal to ctx. Now let's define the card fragment method here. And in this method, the parameters are title and text, and it is returning the fragment. The first thing inside this method which we need to do is to get resources. So we need to say resources is equal to context dot get resources. Second thing which we need to do is to create the object of card fragment. So we need to say card fragment is equal to card fragment dot create, and inside the create we need to say resources dot get text, and we need to pass title, and the second parameter we need to say resources dot get text, and we need to pass text here. After getting the object of card fragment, we need to say card fragment dot set card margin bottom, and right here we need to pass resources dot get dimension pixel size, which is right here, and we need to pass r dot dimen dot card margin bottom, which is right here. If you remember, we have already declared this thing inside the dimensions.xml, which is right here. Now last but not the least, we need to return the card fragment. So we need to say return card fragment. There is one error. In the get fragment method, we have defined the variable row twice, which is definitely not allowed, and we need to change it right here as well. Now let's add rest of the data in the master list and run our program. Please note here that here there is only one row, and we have added two card fragments inside the one row, and here again inside the one row we have added 4 card fragments, because here we need only one row and one column, here we need one row and two columns, and here we need one row and 4 columns. Further, if you observe in the constructor of row, here we are passing one argument, that is card fragment. Here we are passing 2 arguments, and here we are passing 4 arguments. So if you observe the different number of arguments are being incorporated in the constructor because of the reason that we have applied 3 dots here, which is called variable argument. If we do not apply these 3 dots, it will accept only one argument at a time. Let's run our program now. Here is the output on the round wear. This is first page. This is second page. The black area is the margin between first page and the second page. On the second page, we have 2 columns. Swipe it to the left and you will get the second column. And on the page number 3, which is the third page, there are 4 columns. Swipe it to the left, 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 and you can see the 4 columns. Now the thing which we need to observe is, first thing, there are no images because we have not implemented the images yet. Second thing is that for the pages having more than 1 columns, there are no dots at the bottom. Take the example of this. There are no dots. Other thing is that there is no space from the left, from the bottom, and from the right. And last but not the least, this card is not appearing in a box. So let's do the things one by one. First of all, let's make sure that the dots are appearing at the bottom, and further there should be some space from the left, from the right, and from the bottom. To achieve this, we need to implement dots page indicator. Let's do it. Let's open activity main.xml. Initially, in the beginning of the program, we implemented grid view pager. Now we need to implement dots page indicator. Let me implement it quickly. So I have implemented Android support variable view dots page indicator. The ID is page underscore indicator and width and height is wrap content. We have also defined the gravity, which is center, horizontal, and bottom. Now we need to create the object of dots page indicator in the main activity. Let's do it. Let's go to the main activity. In the main activity right here, in the end we need to say dots page indicator. We need to take help from the method find view by ID, and our ID is page underscore indicator. Further, using the dots page indicator object, we need to use the method setPager, and we need to pass grid view pager object inside this. That's it. Let's run our program now. Here is the output again. You can see some margin from the left, some margin from the right, and some margin from the bottom. Let's pull it up and you can see the dots appearing here. There are 2 dots because there are 2 columns, and further if you pull it up, you can see the 4 dots appearing. Now further, if you observe, the card is not appearing in a proper box. Let's do it quickly. So you need to look for Android manifest.xml file. You can get it under the folder manifests, which is right here. Expand it. Open Android manifest.xml. And right here where we are saying theme.device default, you need to set dot light with the L capital. That's it. Save it and run our program again. Here is the output again, and now you can see the card inside a box. Friends, let's take a break again and we'll continue with the background images in our next tutorial. Friends, with this I take your leave. Thank you so much. Please like our page on facebook.com/letsandroid. If you have any query, do write us at info@schoolsteps.in or schoolstepsin@gmail.com. Thank you.